So, any questions from members of the public? Now, okay, let me kick out. Could you introduce yourself? Because I'm not Ed, and I never remember who people are.
Good afternoon, Mr. Douglas. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question. My name is Andrew Ward, and I've been involved in public protection for over 40 years. My question is related to the Chief Executive's verbal report, in particular 2 points. His first point on focus on getting ready for winter, which I know you're about to discuss in the private section, and also on increasing tensions. And before I ask my questions, I'd like to thank Mr. Mackey, and I am being genuine here, for having the strength of character to ignore your predecessor in an attempt to prevent Mr. Mackey from responding to a question from a nurse manager, Jade Taylor, a year ago in this meeting, because I think it's important that people are listened to, particularly your staff and patients like me. Jade Whistleblew then was sacked with no medical opinion permitted to inform the decision whilst medically certified as unfit to work. The Secretary of State tweeted this week, whistleblowers should never be victimised. So my first question, and I'm not expecting answers now, I'd just like you to listen, please, and then you could perhaps think about these when you're having your discussions later. Why, more than 2.5 years after Sir Robert Francis's Freedom to Speak Up report recommendations, 7.3.8 and 9, has NHS Improvement still not mandated every trust CEO to offer a re-employment trial? I note with concern the Whistleblower Support Scheme is no longer called an employment support scheme, is a pilot trial and still hasn't started. Second, and this is a controversial statement, but it's just my observation as a patient. Isn't that willful inaction by NHS Improvement in view of the NHS, and I contend it's an all-year winter staffing crisis, which you will discuss later in private session, agenda item 14, that leaves patients facing growing waits for treatment, whether that be in the corridor queues in A&E departments, such as Royal Stoke University Hospital yet again this month, or for elective surgery, or for patients like me undergoing diagnostic tests as outpatients. And thirdly and finally, why have you helped Jade, but not others, by calling Jade's new employer in April, as without that call, Jade would have not got through the employment checks without a reference. Jade's reference strangely said, dismissed. I quote Jade, and I spoke with her last night. Now I'm expected to watch other NHS whistleblowers play the Hunger Games this winter excluded, while I can put my heating on again. The NHS is falling over with too few staff. What is the agenda here? I simply ask that you just reflect on that, and in particular, the whistleblower, I still call it the whistleblower support scheme that was originally an employment support scheme. You talked about tensions, and there throughout the organisation, there's a group of people here. You've got a staffing crisis, and they could help you. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for making a point. And I will do as you suggest, and we will reflect on that in the next part of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, David Williams from HSJ. Just one question. Should we expect any more departures of chief executives before the end of the year over performance on A&E?
You wish to comment on that, Jim?
Well, you're obviously referring to the events of a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
I think what we can say is none of us want to see unnecessary departures of any leaders. It's a very pressured system. Everyone's trying very hard in very difficult circumstances. But we also need to keep performance under constant scrutiny. And we'll continue to support providers over the next few months, as always. The answer you want is a definite no, and we can't give that. So if performance is really terrible in some places, we'll obviously have to act. But it's absolutely not going to be our first reflex and first action.
Thank you. Brent Mack and I just volunteer in the local community. My question won't be as detailed as these actually. Can I just start by recording my thanks to Jim, really, in terms of his, what I often call the cup of human kindness that he gives to people, and has done for some time. So just like to start with that thank you, Jim, for what you do and for what you will do as well, I know. Just a couple of points really on the quality improvement paper. Really, I've just read it very briefly through. There's a bit of an error in there. Really. I think you call it National Institute for Care Excellence. I'm sure Andrew Dillon would have a different view on that, really, but that's a different one, really. What I didn't really see on pages 7 to 9, when you've got the Appendix B, is anything around Health Watch England or the patients. And again, really, whilst I heard a lot of conversations delivering to patients, trusts, etc., what I didn't get explicitly enough, if I'm honest, for the conversations around the board, well, actually, the patients can help in terms of that quality improvement as well. I'm not saying it's not there, but what I'm saying is, from a member of the public sitting here, it didn't come across really strongly enough. The final point, really, Chair, if I may, really, I'd like to offer my thanks to Sarah, really. I mean, you mentioned about boots on the ground and lots of intelligence and whatever. Can I just call Sarah's shoes on the ground, really, when she visited Gloucester? And again, it wasn't a visit to meet the chief execs of this, that and the other and whatever. It was exactly what I shared before, really, that opportunity to go and meet people in their world, in their conditions, and also people who are not always at the table, people from the inner city farm, people with learning disabilities, people who are volunteering in a little garden project and whatever, really, and across the board. Jane Cummins, who I saw today to offer my thanks in addition to Jane, really, has been tweeting it. I think she did a blog and whatever, and I think she mentioned it at a recent conference as well, really. And I suppose what that demonstrates to me, because it is about demonstrating, there's lots of words, but it is about demonstrating the actions, whatever, and that is about the culture of the people around the board, and in particular Sarah, really, that actually was invited, took that opportunity, shared that. And again, without hogging time too much, we'll celebrate that. But we'll celebrate that with 120 small community organisations and not at the table and whatever on the 31st of January at the House of Lords. It's going to be an event hosted by us, and on the 7th, I know Sarah can't make it, but if there's any on the board who would like to come, we're going to have a lot of the arm's length bodies in the same room with those 120 people. And those 120 community organisations are going to be the ones that hold the national organisations to account for what they said on the 31st. Doesn't happen very often. And again, I would just finish by saying Sarah's played an immense part with that, with her shoes on the ground.
Thank you very much. I mean, thank you to Sarah. Great. Thank you also to Jim. But and it's really helpful to hear that and to know that. And I would just say, I think on the quality side, making sure we build in properly the patient, the user perspective is absolutely central to that. And if we don't express that well, then we've got to look at that and think about that ourselves. But thank you for that contribution. It's really, really welcome and helpful. Sorry, Sarah, you want...
Yeah, well, just to say, Gloucester has lots of things going for it, but one of the best things it has going for it is Bren, who does the most extraordinary job in making sure that the smallest of communities gets heard on the national stage. And if every area of the UK that was as disadvantaged as Gloucester is had someone like Bren, it would be a great service to the country.
Checks in the post, Sarah.
Okay, thank you all very much for your contribution. We will sort of pause now for a few minutes before we go into private session whilst we just clear things up. Okay, thank you very much.